Hey, community group leaders and teachers. This is your teaching series extra for March 31st, and we're going to be continuing our Essential Jesus series. This week looking at a very familiar passage in Luke 15, three parables from Jesus that come in response to a complaint that he receives from the Pharisees. And so the Pharisees have complained that Jesus receives and eats and welcomes sinners. And the Pharisees kind of understood there was a guilt by association mentality. To associate with sinners in their mind made you unclean. And so they avoided at all cost associating with sinners, and so therefore did not understand why Jesus would meet and welcome such people. And really in their obsession with their own fitness for worship, they had neglected to love those who most needed God. And so when they see Jesus on the scene, they just don't understand it. And so Jesus tells three parables in response to this about a lost sheep, about a lost coin, and about a lost son. And of course, the story of the prodigal son is the one we remember the most, and Jesus gives the most detail. This painting behind me, which hangs in my office, is actually Rembrandt's rendition of the prodigal son. And you see the son coming back to the father and the disapproving older brother, which represents the Pharisees and their complaint in this story. And so this week, as we look at this story, there's a few things I think would be really valuable in your groups. First, is there any way that we hold kind of this guilt by association mentality of the Pharisees? You know, Aesop famously said centuries ago that a man is known by the company he keeps. And so is there any parts of us in our culture, even at First Baptist, to where we aren't really wanting to associate with those who are farthest from God? Because you see, the Pharisees in their desire to remain clean had neglected something that was closest to the heart of God, which is love. And they were unwilling to love sinners because of what it might say about them. And so Jesus tells these stories about things that are valuable. A sheep is valuable to a shepherd. A coin, a lost gold coin, is intrinsically valuable. And then, of course, a son is so valuable. And so as we look at that story of the prodigal son, there's really three things that you're going to see this week. Number one, that Jesus seeks out the sinner because the sinner is valuable to him. The word that the Pharisees actually use here, prosdechomai, is a word that doesn't just mean welcome or passively receives. It actually means actively seeks out. It means eagerly waits for. So Jesus is one that seeks out and waits for the sinner. He wants to find them. And that's what we see with this father in this story. Despite what sin that the son has gotten into, he's eagerly waiting and hoping that the son will return. And so we see that it's a good thing to seek out sinners just the way Jesus did, who came to seek and to save the lost. And the second thing we see in this story is really a picture of sin. We have a son who basically goes to his father and says, "Hey, I wish you were dead so I had your money." And the father gives him his inheritance. He goes and spends that and then ends up in poverty. And really what we see is when we reject the Father, when we reject God, we embrace slavery. So the son embraced slavery even before he didn't have resources. First, he embraced the slavery of his own desires as he took those resources and spent them on himself. And then second, he embraced the slavery more explicitly as he indentured himself to a man and was feeding the pigs. And so when we reject the Father, we embrace slavery. And then the third thing we see is just the lavish restoration, the heart of restoration of God in this parable. And that's why this parable is so beloved, is the picture that it gives us of God who is ready and eager to restore. Now what's interesting to do is in the prodigal, what actually causes him to be restored? And the actual words in the text say that as he was feeding the pigs, he came to himself. You see, when we reject God, we also break the relationship that we have with even ourselves. And so when he comes to himself, it means he becomes aware of his situation. That's what the Bible would call spiritual poverty. that he's in need. And then the second thing that he remembers is his father is good. He remembers how good his father is, even in the household servants, and says, why am I here? I'm in desperate need, and I have a good father. And so he comes to him. So this is a wonderful opportunity in your community groups to talk about the nature of salvation. That basically is just coming to the end of ourselves and embracing the goodness of God and coming to him. And God is ready and able to lavishly restore. So I hope it's a great week of discussion for this familiar parable. And I hope you have some fruitful conversations about where we might be like the Pharisees and be neglecting sinners who desperately need the love of Jesus. Thanks. Hope it's a great week.